The harsh September sun beat down on Olivia Reed's tear-stained face as she trudged along the dusty trail leading into Willow Creek, Wyoming territory, 1878. Her arms ached from carrying her 3-month-old daughter, Emma, who mercifully slept against her chest, unaware of her mother's exhaustion or the fact that they were now alone in the world. 2 weeks ago, Olivia had buried her husband alongside the Oregon Trail after typhoid fever claimed him, leaving her a widow at 22 with a baby and no home to return to. "Just a little further, sweet girl," Olivia whispered, adjusting the thin blanket covering Emma's face to shield her from the relentless dust. Her once fine blue calico dress hung loose on her frame, soiled from days of travel and grief. The small bag containing all their worldly possessions, a few baby clothes, her husband's pocket watch, and less than $5 weighed heavily on her shoulder. Willow Creek emerged in the distance, a collection of wooden buildings shimmering in the heat. Olivia had chosen this town based solely on a tattered newspaper advertisement she'd found at a trading post that mentioned a need for schoolteachers. With her education from a Boston ladies' seminary, teaching was her only marketable skill if anyone would hire a woman with an infant. As the town grew closer, Olivia's steps faltered. Exhaustion and hunger clouded her vision, making the ground sway beneath her feet. Emma stirred against her chest, whimpering with the beginnings of hunger herself. Olivia hadn't eaten since yesterday noon, saving the last of her meager provisions for creating watery milk for her daughter. "Just need to rest a moment," she murmured, spotting a large oak tree at the side of the road. She stumbled toward it, her legs wobbling dangerously. Emma began to cry in earnest now, her tiny face scrunched and reddening. Olivia never made it to the tree. Her knees buckled, and she crumpled to the ground, twisting at the last moment to protect Emma from the fall. The baby wailed louder, frightened by the sudden movement and her mother's gasping breaths. "Whoa there!" A deep voice cut through Emma's cries. Dust rose as a horse came to a stop nearby. Through blurred vision, Olivia saw worn leather boots hit the ground before a man knelt beside her. "Madam, can you hear me?" The voice was rich and gentle, tinged with concern. Olivia struggled to focus on the man's face. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his features, but she could make out kind eyes the color of a summer sky and a strong jawline darkened by stubble. "My baby," she managed to whisper, still clutching Emma protectively. The stranger's gaze moved to the crying infant, then back to Olivia's pale face. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he took in her dusty traveling clothes, the small bag, and the desperation etched into her young face. "You're carrying quite a burden there, madam," he said softly. Then, with a gentleness that belied his rugged appearance, he reached out his hands. "Let me carry both." Olivia stared up at him, confused. "Both?" "The baby and that heavy heart you're bearing," he clarified, a sad smile touching his lips. "At least until you get your strength back." Something in his steady gaze made Olivia trust him, or perhaps it was simply that she had no choice. She allowed him to carefully take Emma, who surprisingly settled against his broad chest, her cries quieting to hiccuping sobs. "Name's Nathaniel Burke," he said, his free hand gently helping Olivia to her feet. "Most folks call me Nate. I've got water in my saddlebag and a ranch just outside town. Can I offer you and your little one some rest and a meal?" Olivia swayed on her feet, grateful for his steadying hand. "Olivia Reed," she replied weakly. "And this is Emma. We've come from a long way," Nate nodded, asking no questions as he guided her to his horse. "Town's still a mile off and you're in no condition to walk it. Let me help you up, Mrs. Reed." "It's just Miss now," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking. "My husband Jacob, 2 weeks ago." Understanding crossed Nate's weathered face. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Reed." He handed Emma back to her mother momentarily while he retrieved a canteen. "Drink first, then we'll get you both somewhere safe." The water was cool and felt like heaven on Olivia's parched throat. After she drunk her fill, Nate helped her mount his horse, then handed Emma back up to her before swinging up behind her. His presence was solid and reassuring at her back. "I don't want to be a burden," Olivia protested weakly as Nate clicked his tongue, urging the horse forward. "Everyone needs help sometimes," he replied, his voice rumbling near her ear. "Today it's your turn. Tomorrow might be mine." As they rode toward town, Olivia felt something she hadn't experienced since Jacob fell ill safety. This stranger, this cowboy with kind eyes, had offered help without question. For the first time in weeks, Olivia allowed herself to breathe without the crushing weight of total responsibility. She didn't know what awaited her in Willow Creek, but for now, someone else was helping her carry the load. Nate guided his horse through Willow Creek's main street, nodding at townspeople who called greetings or looked curiously at the woman and baby he carried. Olivia felt the stares but was too exhausted to care. "We'll stop at Doc Miller's first," Nate decided, reining in his horse outside a white clapboard building with a small sign reading Dr. J. Miller, Physician. Before Olivia could protest, he had dismounted and reached up to help her down. "I can't afford a doctor," she whispered, clutching Emma. Nate's eyes softened. "Don't worry about that now. John's a good friend, he'll understand." The doctor proved to be a gray-haired man with spectacles and a kindly manner. He examined both Olivia and Emma efficiently, pronouncing the baby healthy but underweight and Olivia suffering from exhaustion and malnutrition. "What she needs is rest, regular meals, and no worries for at least a week, doctor," Miller told Nate, who had waited patiently in the corner of the examination room. "She'll have it," Nate promised, ignoring Olivia's weak protests. After leaving the doctor's office, Nate stopped at the general store, leaving Olivia and Emma waiting in a chair outside while he purchased supplies. He emerged with packages wrapped in brown paper and a bottle of milk for Emma. "My ranch is about 3 miles outside town," he explained as he helped her back onto his horse. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, will have dinner ready. You can stay in the guest room for as long as you need." "Why are you helping us?" Olivia finally asked, the question that had been troubling her since he'd first stopped on the road. Nate was quiet for a moment, his arms steady around her as he guided the horse out of town. "6 years ago, I rode into Willow Creek much like you, beaten down by life, no money to speak of and not sure where my next meal was coming from. An old rancher named Henry Talbot took a chance on me, gave me work, then taught me ranching." His voice softened. "When he died 3 years back, he left me his place. Said all he asked was that I pass along the kindness when I saw someone who needed it." Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. "Well, Mr. Burke, you certainly found someone who needed it today." "Just Nate, please," he replied. "And I'm glad I was riding into town when I was." The Burke Ranch came into view as they crested a gentle hill, a modest but well-maintained 2-story house painted white with green shutters, a large barn, and several outbuildings, all surrounded by rolling grassland dotted with grazing cattle. "It's lovely," Olivia murmured, admiring the neat homestead. "It's not much compared to some of the bigger spreads," Nate replied, "but it's home." Mrs. Abernathy proved to be a plump, gray-haired woman with a no-nonsense manner that softened immediately upon seeing Olivia and baby Emma. Within an hour, Olivia found herself bathed, dressed in a borrowed nightgown, and tucked into a clean, comfortable bed in a sunny upstairs room, with Emma sleeping in a hastily assembled cradle fashioned from a wooden drawer lined with soft blankets. "You just rest, dear," Mrs. Abernathy instructed, placing a tray with chicken soup and fresh bread on the bedside table. Everything else can wait. Too exhausted to argue, Olivia fell into a deep, dreamless sleep almost immediately after eating. Her last conscious thought a prayer of gratitude for the kindness of strangers. The next morning, Olivia awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, and for a heartbeat, she thought she was back in her parents' Boston home. Then Emma's soft cooing brought reality rushing back. Olivia rose quickly to check on her daughter, finding her awake and wiggling happily in her makeshift cradle. "Good morning, sweet girl," she whispered, lifting Emma and pressing a kiss to her forehead. A soft knock at the door preceded Mrs. Abernathy's entrance with a breakfast tray. "Ah, you're up. How are you feeling this morning, dear?" "Much better, thank you," Olivia replied, surprised to realize it was true. A night of proper sleep in a real bed had done wonders. "I can't thank you enough for your hospitality, but we should be on our way today. I need to find work in town." Mrs. Abernathy clucked disapprovingly. "Nonsense. The doctor said rest for a week, and Mr. Burke insists you stay until you're properly recovered." She set down the tray. "Now, shall I hold the little one while you eat? I've prepared a bottle for her as well." Reluctantly, Olivia handed Emma over, then sat down to the most substantial breakfast she'd seen in weeks: eggs, bacon, toast with preserves, and strong coffee. As she ate, Mrs. Abernathy cooed at Emma, who seemed perfectly content in the older woman's arms. "Mr. Burke had to ride out early to check on a sick calf," Mrs. Abernathy explained, "but he asked me to tell you to make yourself at home. He'll be back for dinner." After breakfast, feeling stronger, Olivia insisted on helping with household chores. Mrs. Abernathy reluctantly agreed to let her fold laundry while seated on the porch, with Emma napping in her cradle nearby. The peaceful domestic scene was how Nate found them when he returned mid-afternoon, his horse kicking up dust as he rode into the yard. Olivia watched him dismount with fluid grace, removing his hat to wipe his brow before approaching the porch. "You're looking better today," he observed, his blue eyes warm as they met hers. Olivia nodded, suddenly self-conscious in her borrowed dress, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. "Thanks to your kindness, but I've been thinking I should try to find work in town tomorrow. I saw the advertisement for a school teacher." Nate leaned against the porch railing. "School doesn't start for another 3 weeks. The last teacher left to get married in August." He hesitated. "The town council meets next Thursday to interview candidates. That gives you plenty of time to recover your strength." "I can't impose on you until then," Olivia protested. "It's no imposition," Nate replied firmly. "Besides, Mrs. Abernathy has been complaining about having no one to talk to but me. You'd be doing me a favor by staying." Emma chose that moment to wake, her small cries drawing both their attention. Without thinking, Nate stepped forward and gently lifted her from the cradle. "Hello there, little lady," he murmured, cradling her with surprising expertise. "Did you have a good nap?" Olivia watched in amazement as Emma quieted immediately, her tiny hand grasping one of Nate's fingers. "She likes you," she said softly. A smile transformed Nate's face. "We understand each other, don't we, Emma?" He looked up at Olivia. "My sister has 4 children. I've had some practice." "Where is your family?" Olivia asked, realizing she knew almost nothing about the man who had so generously taken them in. A shadow crossed Nate's face. "Back east in Pennsylvania. I haven't seen them in 8 years." There was a story there, Olivia sensed, but didn't press. Everyone had parts of their past they preferred not to discuss. She certainly did. The days fell into a gentle rhythm. Olivia regained her strength rapidly with proper rest and meals. while Emma thrived under the attention of 3 adults who doted on her. Despite Olivia's initial protests, she found herself settling into life at the ranch, helping Mrs. Abernathy with cooking and mending, and even learning to make butter from the milk of Nate's 2 dairy cows. Nate himself was often busy with ranch work, but he always made time to inquire after their welfare, and each evening after dinner, he would sit on the porch with Olivia, Emma sleeping in her arms, and tell her stories of Wyoming territory or ask thoughtful questions about her life before. Olivia shared carefully edited versions of her past her education at the ladies' seminary, meeting Jacob when he came to Boston on business, their hasty marriage against her parents' wishes, and their decision to seek fortune in Oregon. She omitted the painful rejection by her family, who had disowned her for marrying beneath her station, and the desperate circumstances that had led them to attempt the dangerous journey west with so few resources. "What about you?" she asked Nate on their 4th evening together. "What brought you west?" Nate was silent for a long moment, watching the sun sink behind the distant mountains. "War," he finally said. "I fought for the Union. Came home in '65 to find I couldn't settle back into normal life, the things I'd seen done." He shook his head. "My family tried to understand, but how could they? So I drifted west, working ranches, breaking horses, taking whatever jobs came along." "Until you met Henry Talbot," Olivia finished softly. "Until Henry," Nate agreed, a fond smile touching his lips. "Ornery old cuss, but the closest thing to a father I'd known since I was a boy. My own passed when I was 12. "I'm sorry," Olivia said, understanding loss all too well. Nate shrugged. "It was a long time ago, but Henry, he taught me that a man needs roots, purpose. Said a ranch gives you both." His expression grew thoughtful. "What about your family? Will they be worried about you?" Olivia tensed, then decided honesty was owed for honesty. "No, they made it clear I was no longer their daughter when I married Jacob. He was a shopkeeper's son not suitable for a Reed of Boston, according to my father." Nate's eyes darkened with understanding. "Their loss," he said simply, reaching over to gently touch Emma's tiny hand, "and a foolish one at that. Thursday arrived too quickly." Olivia dressed with care in her blue calico, freshly washed and mended by Mrs. Abernathy, and pinned her hair in a modest but becoming style. Nate had offered to drive her to town in his wagon and watch Emma during her interview with the town council. "Are you nervous?" he asked as they traveled the now familiar road to Willow Creek. "Terrified," Olivia admitted, "but also grateful for the opportunity. If not for you, we might never have made it this far." Nate's eyes remained fixed on the road. "You'd have found a way." "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Thank you for believing that." The town council consisted of 5 men, including Mayor Peterson, who owned the largest general store, and Reverend Thomas from the white clapboard church on the hill. They interviewed Olivia in the small room above the mayor's store that served as the town hall. "Your credentials are impressive, Miss Reed," Mayor Peterson acknowledged, examining the teaching certificate she'd somehow managed to keep safe through all her travels. "But I must ask, how do you intend to manage teaching duties with an infant to care for?" It was the question Olivia had dreaded. "Emma is a good baby, and I've arranged for childcare during school hours," she answered, hoping her uncertainty didn't show. In truth, she had no such arrangements, but Mrs. Abernathy had hinted she might be willing to help. The men exchanged glances. "The position pays $30 a month," Reverend Thomas explained. "The schoolhouse has a small attached residence for the teacher. Term begins in 3 weeks. There is one other applicant," Mayor Peterson added. Mrs. Winters, the blacksmith's widow. She has experience teaching her own children but no formal certification. I see, Olivia said, her heart sinking. A local widow would naturally be preferred over a stranger with a baby. We'll make our decision by Monday, the mayor concluded. Thank you for your time, Miss Reed. Outside, Nate waited with Emma, who was contentedly chewing on her fist. How did it go? He asked, noting Olivia's downcast expression. There's another candidate, a local widow, she explained as they walked to the wagon. I suspect the position is already hers. Nate frowned. Don't count yourself out yet. This town needs a proper teacher, not just someone who's taught her own children. Olivia smiled weakly. Either way, I need to make plans. I have enough money for a few nights at the boarding house if necessary. Or you could stay at the ranch until you find something suitable, Nate countered, helping her into the wagon. There's no rush, Olivia. The use of her name again sent that same warmth through her. You've done so much already, she protested. Maybe I like having you and Emma around, Nate replied quietly, his eyes meeting hers briefly before he turned his attention to the horses. The return journey was made mostly in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the ranch, however, Nate cleared his throat. I've been meaning to ask, do you have any experience with bookkeeping? Olivia glanced at him in surprise. Yes, actually. I helped Jacob with his shop accounts, and before that, I was responsible for household accounts at my parents' home. Nate nodded. I've been looking for someone to help organize the ranch books. Henry kept records, but they're a mess, and I never seem to find time to sort them properly. He hesitated. It would be a paying position, of course. Not much, but enough to tide you over until the school board decides. Olivia studied his profile, wondering if this was merely another act of charity. Are you offering me work because you need help, or because you think I need money? A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Can it be both? The books really are a disaster, and I'd be grateful for the help. His expression turned serious. But I wouldn't insult you by offering charity disguised as work, Olivia. I respect you too much for that. The sincerity in his voice convinced her. Then I accept with thanks. That evening after dinner, Nate led Olivia to the small study off the main parlor, where a roll-top desk stood laden with ledgers and papers. Emma slept peacefully in Mrs. Abernathy's arms, the housekeeper having volunteered to watch her so Olivia could work uninterrupted. As you can see, organization isn't my strong suit, Nate admitted, gesturing to the chaotic pile. Henry kept everything but his system, if he had one, died with him. Olivia surveyed the mess with a practiced eye. I'll need to sort these by date first, then separate expenses from income. She rolled up her sleeves. Let me get started. For the next 3 hours, Olivia lost herself in the familiar work of organizing financial records. Nate sat nearby, answering questions about various entries and explaining the ranch operations. By the time they finished for the night, she had made considerable progress, creating neat stacks of sorted documents and beginning a fresh ledger. You're a natural at this, Nate observed as they stood to leave. The ranch accounts haven't looked this organized since, well, ever. Olivia smiled, pleased by his approval. It's satisfying work. I've always enjoyed bringing order to chaos. A valuable skill, Nate replied, his eyes lingering on her face a moment longer than necessary. One of many you possess, I'm finding. Their gazes held for a heartbeat too long, and Olivia felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with pride in her work. She broke the connection first, looking down at her ink-stained fingers. I should check on Emma, she murmured. Of course, Nate agreed, stepping back to allow her to pass. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Nate. His name felt intimate on her lips, and she hurried from the room, confused by her own reaction. In the privacy of her bedroom, Olivia gently took a sleeping Emma from Mrs. Abernathy, thanking the housekeeper for her help. After the older woman left, Olivia sat in the rocking chair by the window, holding her daughter close. "What am I doing, Emma?" she whispered. "Your father's only been gone a month. I have no business feeling, whatever this is." But as she rocked her daughter, Olivia acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. In the short time they'd been at the ranch, she had developed feelings for Nate Burke that went beyond gratitude. His kindness, his gentle way with Emma, his quiet strength all had combined to create an attraction she hadn't expected and wasn't sure she should welcome. "It's too soon," she told herself firmly. "And besides, we'll likely be leaving soon." Yet as she prepared for bed, Olivia found herself hoping the school board would take their time making a decision. The next few days brought a steady routine. Mornings were spent helping Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks, afternoons devoted to organizing Nate's accounts, and evenings passed in pleasant conversation on the porch. Nate began teaching Olivia about ranch operations, showing her the careful records he kept of cattle breeding and grazing rotations. "You run this place like a science," she observed one afternoon as they walked back from inspecting a newly repaired fence line, Emma secured in a sling across Olivia's chest. Nate smiled. "Henry believed ranching was part art, part science. Said the land tells you what it needs if you listen properly." "You loved him very much," Olivia noted, touched by the reverence in his voice. "He saved my life," Nate replied simply. "Not just by giving me work, but by showing me I could build something worth having." He gazed across the rolling pastures. "Before Henry, I was just drifting, working enough to earn drinking money, not caring if I saw tomorrow." Olivia understood suddenly why he had stopped to help her that day on the road. "And now you're paying his kindness forward." Nate's eyes met hers. "It's more than that," he said quietly. "With you and Emma, it's not obligation, it's—" He trailed off, seemingly unable to find the words. Emma chose that moment to fuss, breaking the charged moment between them. Olivia adjusted the baby in her sling, her heart racing at what Nate might have been about to say. Monday arrived with a letter from the town council, delivered by a freckle-faced boy on horseback. Nate brought it to Olivia where she sat in the parlor, mending one of his shirts while Mrs. Abernathy played with Emma on a blanket nearby. "This came for you," he said, holding out the envelope. His expression was carefully neutral, but Olivia sensed tension in his shoulders. With trembling fingers, Olivia broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper. She read it twice to be certain, then looked up at Nate, who waited expectantly. "I got the position," she whispered, hardly believing it. "They chose me over Mrs. Winters." "Of course they did," Nate replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "You're a certified teacher with proper training. When do they want you to start?" "School begins in 2 weeks," Olivia said, scanning the letter again. "They've asked me to move into the teacher's residence this weekend so I can prepare the schoolhouse." "That's wonderful news," Nate said, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm happy for you, Olivia. Truly." Mrs. Abernathy scooped up Emma, announcing it was time for the baby's nap, and tactfully left the room, closing the door behind her. "I couldn't have done this without your help," Olivia said once they were alone. "You've given us a chance at a real life here." Nate moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "You did this yourself. I just provided a safe place to rest." He hesitated. "You know, the offer to help with the ranch account still stands. It would be additional income, and the teacher's residence is only a short ride from here." Olivia's heart lifted at the thought of maintaining a connection to the ranch to Nate. "I'd like that," she admitted. as long as it wouldn't interfere with my teaching duties. We'll make it work, Nate promised. Then, with unexpected boldness, he reached out to take her hand. Olivia, I've grown accustomed to having you and Emma here. The house will feel empty without you. Olivia looked down at their joined hands, noting how his large, work-roughened palm dwarfed her smaller one. We've imposed on your hospitality long enough, she said, though the words lacked conviction. It's never been an imposition, Nate insisted. Having you here, it's made this place feel like a home again. Olivia raised her eyes to his, finding an emotion there that both thrilled and frightened her. Nate, a knock at the door interrupted whatever she might have said. Mrs. Abernathy poked her head in. Sorry to disturb you, but Mr. Daniels is here about those cattle he wants to purchase. Nate released Olivia's hand reluctantly. Tell him I'll be right out. When Mrs. Abernathy retreated, he turned back to Olivia. We'll talk more later, she nodded, not trusting her voice. As he left to attend to business, Olivia pressed her hand to her racing heart, wondering what might have happened if they hadn't been interrupted. The weekend arrived too quickly. On Saturday morning, Nate hitched the wagon to take Olivia, Emma, and their few belongings to the teacher's residence in town. Mrs. Abernathy had tearfully packed a basket of food and insisted on gifting Olivia with 2 dresses she had altered to fit her slender frame. You're both welcome here anytime, the housekeeper said, embracing Olivia and kissing Emma's forehead. This little angel has brightened up this old house more than you know. Olivia blinked back tears. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Abernathy. We'll visit often, I promise. The journey to town was quieter than usual, both Olivia and Nate seemingly lost in their own thoughts. Emma slept peacefully in her mother's arms, unaware of the impending change. The teacher's residence proved to be a small but tidy 2-room structure attached to the 1-room schoolhouse. It contained a combined kitchen and living area, plus a bedroom just large enough for a bed and cradle. Mayor Peterson's wife had arranged for basic furnishings, and several town women had contributed household items to welcome the new teacher. It's lovely, Olivia said, attempting enthusiasm as she surveyed what would be their new home. After the spaciousness and warmth of Nate's ranch house, the residence felt cramped and impersonal. Nate carried in her bags and the box of supplies the townswomen had provided. It's a start, he said, setting them down. You can make it your own in time. They stood awkwardly in the small space, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Nate cleared his throat. I thought perhaps you might ride out to the ranch on Sunday afternoons to work on the accounts, he suggested. I could send one of the hands to fetch you or come myself if work allows. Olivia nodded quickly. I'd like that. And perhaps you could join us for Sunday dinner sometimes before we ride back. I'd be honored, Nate replied, his smile warming his eyes. He hesitated, then added, Olivia, there's something I should say before I go. A knock at the door interrupted them. Reverend Thomas stood outside, beaming. Ah, Miss Reed, getting settled in, I see. I thought I'd come by to discuss the curriculum and introduce you to a few of your future pupils. Nate stepped back, whatever he'd been about to say remaining unspoken. I should be going, he said, tipping his hat to the Reverend. Good day, Reverend. Olivia, I'll see you Sunday. And then he was gone, leaving Olivia to wonder what might have been said if they'd had just a few more moments alone. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia cleaned and organized the schoolhouse, prepared lessons, and met with parents and students. The townsfolk proved welcoming, especially once they realized she was a competent teacher with genuine enthusiasm for education. True to his word, Nate came for her on Sunday afternoon, bringing Emma a small wooden rattle he had carved himself. Their day at the ranch was pleasant, but somehow constrained. both of them careful to maintain a friendly distance that hadn't existed before. Mrs. Abernathy chattered enough for all of them, delighted to have her girls back for a visit. School began the following Monday with 15 students ranging in age from 6 to 16. Olivia discovered she genuinely enjoyed teaching, finding satisfaction in awakening young minds to new ideas. The town council members who observed her first day seemed pleased with her methods and management of the diverse age groups. As September gave way to October, Olivia settled into a routine. Weekdays were devoted to teaching and caring for Emma, whose sweet nature made her a favorite with students and townspeople alike. Sundays were spent at the ranch, working on accounts and enjoying Mrs. Abernathy's cooking. Nate remained a steady presence in their lives, but the intimate moment they'd almost shared before her move to town seemed increasingly distant. He was unfailingly kind and attentive, bringing small gifts for Emma and occasionally for Olivia as well, a book of poetry, fresh honey from a neighbor's hives, wildflowers gathered on his rides. Yet something had changed. The easy companionship they'd developed during her stay at the ranch had been replaced by a careful politeness that left Olivia aching for what might have been. "You're a fool, Olivia Reed," she told her reflection one evening as she prepared for bed. "The man offered you shelter and work when you needed it most. Don't mistake kindness for something more." But in her heart, she knew there had been more, at least the beginning of something, before life and circumstance had intervened. October brought crisp weather and the town's harvest festival. As the new schoolteacher, Olivia was expected to attend and supervise the schoolchildren's performances. Emma, now 5 months old and increasingly alert, watched the proceedings from her mother's arms, fascinated by the music and colorful decorations. Nate arrived midway through the afternoon, looking uncommonly handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his dark hair neatly combed. He made his way through the crowd to where Olivia stood watching the apple bobbing contest. "Afternoon, Miss Reed," he greeted her, tipping his hat. "And Miss Emma." He tickled the baby's chin, earning a delighted gurgle. "I didn't expect to see you here," Olivia said, pleased despite herself. "I thought harvest time kept ranchers too busy for festivals." "It does," Nate admitted, "but some things are worth making time for." His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Olivia glimpsed the warmth that had been missing in recent weeks. Their conversation was interrupted by Mayor Peterson announcing the beginning of the square dance. The town's few musicians struck up a lively tune, and couples began forming sets on the open ground in front of the band. "Would you do me the honor?" Nate asked, holding out his hand. Olivia glanced down at Emma. "I can't leave her. I'll watch the little angel, Mrs." Abernathy appeared as if summoned, already reaching for the baby. "You two young people go enjoy yourselves." Before Olivia could protest further, Emma was whisked away, and Nate was leading her toward the dancing area. As they took their places in the set, Olivia felt suddenly shy, aware of curious glances from townspeople who had noticed the rancher's attention to their new teacher. "I'm afraid I'm out of practice," she admitted as the music began. "Just follow my lead," Nate replied, his hand warm at her waist as they began the first figure. To Olivia's surprise, Nate proved to be an accomplished dancer, guiding her confidently through the steps. As they moved together, the careful distance of recent weeks seemed to melt away, replaced by the easy connection they'd once shared. "You've been avoiding me," Nate said quietly during a moment when the dance brought them close together. "No more than you've been avoiding me," Olivia countered, meeting his gaze. A rueful smile crossed his face. "Fair enough. I thought perhaps you needed space to establish yourself here without complications." "Complications," Olivia repeated, her heart quickening. The dance separated them before he could respond, and by the time they came together again, the moment for personal conversation had passed. They completed the dance in silence, though Olivia felt the weight of unspoken words between them. As the music ended, applause broke out around them. Nate led Olivia back to where Mrs. Abernathy waited with Emma, who had fallen asleep in the housekeeper's arms. "She's an angel," Mrs. Abernathy declared, carefully transferring the sleeping baby to Olivia. "Didn't make a peep the whole time." "Thank you for watching her," Olivia said gratefully. The autumn air had turned chilly with the setting sun, and she pulled Emma's blanket more securely around her. "It's getting cold," Nate observed. "Let me walk you home." The short walk to the teacher's residence was made in companionable silence, the earlier tension between them eased somewhat by their shared dance. At her door, Nate hesitated. "Would you and Emma like to come out to the ranch tomorrow? Not for work," he added quickly. "Just a visit. Mrs. Abernathy's been complaining that she doesn't see enough of you both." Olivia smiled. "I'd like that. What time should we expect you? After church?" "Around noon. We'll be ready," she promised. Nate nodded, his eyes lingering on her face in the dim light from her windows. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might lean in, might finally bridge the gap that had grown between them. Instead, he stepped back, touching the brim of his hat. "Good night, Olivia," he said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." As she watched him walk away, Olivia felt a curious mixture of disappointment and anticipation. Whatever complications Nate had mentioned, it seemed they might finally address them tomorrow. The next day dawned bright and clear, with just enough chill in the air to hint at the coming winter. After church services, Olivia hurried home to prepare Emma for their visit to the ranch. She chose a pretty blue dress for herself, one that Mrs. Abernathy had altered, and carefully brushed her hair before pinning it up in a becoming style. "We're just going to visit friends," she told her reflection, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Nothing more." Nate arrived precisely at noon, driving the wagon rather than riding horseback. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance as well, wearing a clean shirt and his good Sunday coat despite the informality of the occasion. "The ladies look lovely today," he commented, helping Olivia into the wagon after securing Emma's basket. The compliment brought a flush to Olivia's cheeks that had nothing to do with the crisp air. The ride to the ranch seemed shorter than usual, filled with easy conversation about the harvest festival, Olivia's students, and Nate's recent acquisition of a new breeding bull. It felt like the early days of their acquaintance, before complications and careful distance had intruded. Mrs. Abernathy greeted them with her usual enthusiasm, immediately claiming Emma for a cuddle while sending Nate and Olivia to get some fresh air before dinner. The knowing look she gave them suggested the housekeeper had ideas about the nature of their relationship that went beyond employer and bookkeeper. "She's not subtle, is she?" Olivia remarked as Nate led her toward the small apple orchard behind the house. "Subtlety has never been Mrs. Abernathy's strong suit," Nate agreed with a chuckle. "She's been hinting for weeks that I should do something about my feelings for you." The casual admission stopped Olivia in her tracks. "Your feelings?" she repeated, hardly daring to believe she'd heard correctly. Nate turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "I've been wanting to speak to you about this for some time, but it never seemed right. First you were recovering, then preparing to teach, then settling into town." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, Olivia, I care for you. More than I expected to, and certainly more than is proper given how recently you lost your husband." Olivia's heart pounded as she absorbed his words. "I've felt the same confusion," she admitted. "It seems disloyal to Jacob's memory to have such feelings so soon." I would never want to dishonor his memory, Nate said earnestly, or rush you into something you're not ready for, but I couldn't let more time pass without at least being honest about how I feel. A cool breeze rustled the remaining leaves on the apple trees, sending a few spiraling down around them. Olivia gathered her courage and spoke from her heart. When Jacob died, I thought my life was over. I was alone in a strange territory with a baby, no money, and no prospects. She met Nate's gaze steadily. Then you found us on that road and said those words I'll never forget, let me carry both. And you have, Nate. You've helped carry my burdens and my heart when they were at their heaviest. Nate took a step closer. I would gladly carry them for the rest of our lives if you'd allow it. The implication of his words took Olivia's breath away. Are you saying I'm not proposing? Not yet, Nate clarified quickly. That would be too soon for both of us. But I am asking if you might consider allowing our friendship to grow into something more in time. Relief and happiness flowed through Olivia. I would like that very much, she whispered. Nate's smile was radiant as he reached for her hand, bringing it gently to his lips. Then we'll take it slow, get to know each other properly, and see where the future leads us. The tender moment was interrupted by Mrs. Abernathy's call from the house, announcing that dinner was ready. As they walked back, hands still joined, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. The future that had seemed so bleak on that dusty road now held promise and possibility. Winter arrived early that year, bringing heavy snow by mid-November. Olivia's small residence, while cozy, proved difficult to keep warm during the coldest days. More than once, she and Emma were invited to spend the night at the homes of concerned townspeople when blizzards made travel impossible. Nate, true to his word, respected Olivia's need for time and independence. Their relationship developed slowly but steadily through Sunday visits, occasional dinners in town, and notes delivered by ranch hands. Each encounter deepened their understanding and appreciation of one another. As Christmas approached, the schoolchildren prepared a special program for the town. Olivia spent extra hours at the schoolhouse, rehearsing songs and recitations, while Emma contentedly played in a corner, now able to sit up on her own and increasingly curious about her surroundings. On the evening of the program, the schoolhouse was packed with proud parents and townspeople. Olivia watched nervously as her students performed, relieved when each recitation and song went smoothly. Emma sat on Mrs. Abernathy's lap in the front row, wearing a new red dress Nate had brought from his last trip to Cheyenne. After the final carol, Mayor Peterson stood to address the crowd. Before we conclude this evening's wonderful program, I'd like to take a moment to express the town council's appreciation for our new teacher, Miss Reed. In just a few months, she has earned the respect of parents and the devotion of her pupils. Applause filled the room, and Olivia blushed at the unexpected recognition. As the gathering began to disperse, she found herself surrounded by parents offering thanks and holiday wishes. Nate waited patiently until the crowd thinned before approaching with Emma in his arms. The baby reached immediately for her mother, babbling happily. "You've done an amazing job with them," Nate said, nodding toward the departing students. "The whole town can see it." "Thank you," Olivia replied, settling Emma on her hip. "It means a lot to hear that." They walked together toward the teacher's residence, their breath forming clouds in the cold night air. Fresh snow crunched beneath their boots and stars sparkled in the clear sky above. "I have something to ask you," Nate said as they reached her door. "Mrs. Abernathy and I would like to invite you and Emma to spend Christmas at the ranch. The weather forecast suggests more snow, and I don't like the thought of you both alone if the roads become impassable." The invitation touched Olivia deeply. "We'd love to," she accepted without hesitation. When should we come? School breaks for the holiday on Friday, doesn't it? I could collect you then and bring you back after New Year's, weather permitting. The thought of nearly 2 weeks at the ranch, 2 weeks of Nate's company, of Mrs. Abernathy's motherly care, of the warmth and comfort she'd come to associate with that place filled Olivia with anticipation. "That sounds perfect," she said, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. Nate's smile matched her own. "Good. It's settled then." He hesitated, then leaned forward to place a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Good night, Olivia. Sweet dreams." The brief contact sent warmth spreading through her despite the cold. "Good night, Nate." As she watched him walk away through the falling snow, Olivia hugged Emma closer. "We're going home for Christmas, sweet girl," she whispered, realizing with a start that she had come to think of the ranch as home. Christmas at the ranch exceeded even Olivia's fond memories of the place. Mrs. Abernathy had decorated with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and candles in every window. A pine tree stood in the corner of the parlor, festooned with paper ornaments, strings of cranberries, and small carved wooden figures that Nate explained had been Henry Talbot's prized possessions. On Christmas Eve, after Emma had been tucked into bed in the upstairs room Olivia had once occupied, the 3 adults gathered in the parlor. Mrs. Abernathy served hot cider and her special Christmas cookies before announcing she was retiring early, leaving Nate and Olivia alone by the fireplace. "I have something for you," Nate said, reaching behind the sofa to produce a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with a red ribbon. "I thought you might like to open it tonight, just between us." Olivia accepted the gift with surprise. "But I've nothing for you. Having you and Emma here is gift enough," Nate interrupted gently. "Please open it." Inside the package, Olivia found a beautiful leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with her initials. "It's lovely," she breathed, running her fingers over the soft leather. "I noticed you writing lessons and thoughts on loose papers," Nate explained. "Thought you might like something more permanent, a place to keep your memories, plans, dreams." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to Olivia's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's perfect." Nate moved closer on the sofa, taking her hand. "Olivia, these past months getting to know you and Emma have been the happiest of my life. You've brought something to my home and my heart that I didn't even know was missing." Olivia squeezed his hand, her own heart full. "You've given us so much, Nate, a chance at a new life when all seemed lost. I want to give you more," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I've tried to respect that, but my feelings have only grown stronger with time." The firelight cast a warm glow on his face as he gazed at her, and Olivia saw in his eyes everything she'd come to feel for him: admiration, tenderness, and a deeper emotion that made her breath catch. "So have mine," she admitted softly. Nate's face brightened with hope. "Then perhaps it's time we discussed our future more concretely." He took both her hands in his. "I'm not asking for any decisions tonight. Just know that when you're ready, if you're ready, I want nothing more than to make you and Emma a permanent part of my life." Olivia's heart soared at his words. I think I'm nearly ready," she whispered. "Jacob will always have a place in my heart and in Emma's life story, but I've learned that the heart can love again without betraying what came before." "Take all the time you need," Nate assured her. "I'm not going anywhere." With infinite tenderness, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in their first real kiss. It was gentle and sweet, a promise of deeper connection to come when both were fully ready. When they parted, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Whatever the future held, she knew it would include this good, kind man who had stopped on a dusty road to help a struggling mother and child. Christmas Day brought joy and simple pleasures. Emma, though too young to understand the holiday, delighted in the colorful wrappings of the few presents and the extra attention from Nate and Mrs. Abernathy. Olivia watched with contentment as Nate bounced Emma on his knee, the baby's laughter filling the warm parlor. "She adores you," Olivia observed as Emma grabbed at Nate's watch chain for the 100th time. "The feeling is entirely mutual," Nate replied, gently disentangling his chain from her tiny fingers. "She's going to be as beautiful and intelligent as her mother, Mrs. Abernathy," bringing in more coffee, snorted. "That child already has you wrapped around her little finger, Mr. Burke. Heaven help you when she's old enough to ask for a pony." "I imagine she'll have one by her 3rd birthday at the latest," Nate admitted with a grin, earning a laugh from both women. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a pleasant blur of shared meals, quiet evenings by the fire, and occasional sleigh rides when the weather permitted. Nate taught Olivia to drive the sleigh herself, his arms around her as she handled the reins, his laugh warm in her ear when she took a turn too sharply. On New Year's Eve, with Emma asleep upstairs and Mrs. Abernathy retired for the night, Nate and Olivia sat together on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in heavy blankets and watching the stars. "Any wishes for the new year?" Nate asked, his arm around her shoulders. Olivia considered the question. "A year ago, I would have wished for survival," she replied honestly. "Now, I wish for happiness, for Emma to grow strong and healthy, for my students to learn and thrive." She turned to look at him. "For us to continue building whatever this is between us." Nate's arm tightened around her. "I can help with at least some of those wishes." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I have something else for you. Not a New Year's gift exactly, but a token of my intentions." He opened his palm to reveal a simple silver ring with a small pearl. "This was my mother's," he explained. "She gave it to me before I left for the war, said it would bring me home safely." His eyes met Olivia's. "I'm not asking for your answer tonight, but I want you to have this as a promise that when you're ready, truly ready, I'm here." Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she looked at the ring. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You don't need to wear it," Nate assured her quickly. "Just keep it until you know your heart." Olivia closed his fingers back around the ring. "Keep it safe for me," she said softly. "Not because I'm refusing, but because when I accept it, and I will, Nate, I want it to be a moment neither of us ever forgets." Understanding and joy lit his face. He leaned forward to kiss her, a deeper, more passionate kiss than their Christmas Eve embrace. As they parted, the distant church bell in town began to toll midnight. "Happy New Year, Olivia," Nate murmured against her lips. "Happy New Year," she echoed, feeling in her heart that it truly would be. The winter months passed with surprising speed. Olivia's days were filled with teaching, caring for Emma, and weekend visits to the ranch. As the snow began to melt in early March, revealing the first hints of green beneath, she found herself at a crossroads. The school term would end in May. The town council had already asked if she intended to renew her contract for the following year. And while Olivia enjoyed teaching, her thoughts increasingly turned to a different future, one that included a permanent place at Nate's side. They had continued to grow closer, their relationship deepening with each shared conversation, each tender moment. Nate had become not just a suitor but a trusted friend and increasingly a father figure to Emma, who at 9 months now crawled enthusiastically and babbled a vocabulary that included something very close to Nate. On a mild Sunday in late March, as they walked along the creek that ran through Nate's property, Emma asleep in the sling on Olivia's chest, Nate brought up the subject that had been on both their minds. "Have you given any thought to the council's offer?" he asked, helping her over a fallen log. "I have," Olivia admitted. "I love teaching, but—" She paused, gathering her courage. "But I've been thinking about other possibilities as well." Nate's expression grew serious. Such as? "Such as accepting a certain proposal that was implied on New Year's Eve," Olivia replied, her heart pounding. "If it's still being offered." Nate stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Are you certain? I promised we would wait until you were ready, and I meant it." Olivia nodded, her decision firm. "I'm ready, Nate. Jacob will always be part of my past, part of Emma's history, but you're the future I want for both of us." Joy transformed Nate's face. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and withdrew the pearl ring he had carried with him every day since New Year's Eve. Dropping to one knee on the damp ground, he took Olivia's free hand in his. "Olivia Reed, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of letting me be a father to Emma and perhaps other children we might be blessed with? Of building a life together on this land that has become so much more since you came into it?" Tears of happiness filled Olivia's eyes as she looked down at this man who had changed her life with a simple offer to help carry her burdens. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Nate slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to gather both Olivia and Emma in a gentle embrace. "I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret this decision," he murmured against her hair. "I never could," Olivia replied, her heart overflowing. "You've already given us more than I ever dared hope for." They were married in the town church on the first Saturday in June, just after the school term ended. The entire town turned out for the occasion, Olivia's students forming an honor guard with flowers as she walked down the aisle. Emma, now able to stand with support, was carried by Mrs. Abernathy, who wept joyfully throughout the ceremony. Reverend Thomas beamed as he pronounced them husband and wife. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder," he declared, before adding with a smile, "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Burke." Nate's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors as husband and wife, Emma reached out from Mrs. Abernathy's arms, clearly wanting to be part of the moment. Nate lifted her high, settling her between them as they walked back down the aisle. "A family," he whispered to Olivia, his voice thick with emotion. At last. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns hanging from tree branches. As twilight fell, Nate led Olivia in their first dance as husband and wife, her white dress glowing in the soft light. "Happy?" he asked, holding her close. "Completely," she assured him, resting her head against his shoulder. "Though I still can't quite believe how much has changed in less than a year." "All because I happened to be riding into town that day," Nate mused. Olivia smiled up at him. "I don't think it was mere chance. I think some things are meant to be." Later that night, after the guests had departed and Emma slept peacefully in what was now officially her nursery, Nate and Olivia stood on the porch of their home, arms around each other as they gazed at the star-filled sky. "What are you thinking?" Nate asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "I was thinking about the day we met," Olivia replied. "How lost I felt, how heavy my heart was with grief and fear." She turned in his arms to face him. "And then you appeared and said those words that changed everything." "Let me carry both," Nate recalled softly. "You've done exactly that," Olivia said, reaching up to touch his cheek. "You carried us when we couldn't walk another step. You gave us shelter when we had nowhere to go. You loved us when we needed it most." Nate covered her hand with his own. "And I always will," he promised, "for as long as I live." As he sealed his vow with a kiss, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that the heavy heart she had carried that day on the dusty road had been transformed into something light and joyful, a heart full of love, hope, and the promise of a beautiful future. 1 year later, Olivia sat in the rocking chair on the porch, watching as Nate taught Emma, now nearly 2, to feed the chickens in the yard. The little girl's delighted laughter filled the air each time the hens pecked at the grain in her small hands. "Careful, little cowgirl," Nate cautioned with a grin as Emma tried to chase a particularly bold rooster. "That old fellow doesn't like to be hurried." Olivia's hand rested on her rounded belly, where their second child, a son, according to Mrs. Abernathy's confident prediction, had been growing for 7 months. The ranch had prospered under Nate's careful management, allowing them to build an addition to the house and hire 2 more hands to help with the expanding herd. Life wasn't always easy in the Wyoming territory. Winter storms, summer droughts, and the 1,000 natural challenges of ranch life tested them regularly. But they faced each difficulty together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. As Emma ran to Nate with outstretched arms, he swung her high above his head before settling her on his shoulders. "Mama," Emma called, waving excitedly. "Look how tall." "I see you, darling," Olivia called back, her heart full as she watched the 2 people she loved most in the world. Nate carried Emma toward the porch, his expression softening as he took in the sight of his pregnant wife. "How are my other favorite people doing?" he asked, gently touching her belly. As if in answer, the baby kicked forcefully against his hand. "Active today," Olivia laughed. "Like his father, always in motion." "Or her mother, always determined," Nate countered with a grin, setting Emma down to play with her wooden blocks on the porch. Settling beside Olivia on the porch swing, Nate draped his arm around her shoulders. "I was thinking," he began, "about expanding the orchard next spring, and maybe adding a few more dairy cows. Mrs. Abernathy says her cousin's daughter might be looking for work, could help with the house and the children once this little one arrives." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, content to listen as he outlined his plans for their future. This was the gift Nate had given her, not just a home or security, but a future filled with possibilities, a life rich with purpose and love. "I love you, Nathaniel Burke," she said simply when he paused, "more than I ever thought possible." His arm tightened around her. "And I love you, Olivia Burke. You and our children are everything to me." As the sun began to set over the Wyoming plains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Olivia reflected on how far they had come from that fateful day on the dusty road. She had been carrying so much then: grief, fear, desperation, and a tiny baby who depended entirely on her. And then a cowboy with kind eyes had stopped and offered to help carry her burdens. In doing so, he had given her the greatest gift of all, a heart no longer heavy but full, brimming with love and the joy of a life well lived. Emma climbed into her mother's lap, careful of the baby bump, and Nate's arm encircled them both. Together, they watched the sun sink below the horizon, a family forged from chance and choice, bound by love and the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come.